Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers here in Korea and around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Friday, April 25th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom and you're tuned into our ongoing coverage of the Sewol ferry disaster. 181 people have now been confirmed dead in the sinking of the ferry and 121 others remain unaccounted for. In waters off Korea's southwestern coast where the accident happened, search and rescue operations are now into the 10th day. Not a single survivor has been found since the ferry capsized last Wednesday morning. For the latest, we now go live to our Song Ji-sun at Peng-mok-hang Harbour, just 20 kilometers from the accident site. Ji-sun.
Mark, a new morning has arrived, but Thursday was the most important and critical day in terms of search and rescue operation, as the current is expected to get even stronger today again. More bodies have been recovered, and a total of 22 more bodies were recovered from Thursday to this morning, and the death toll now well exceeds the number of survivors, standing at 181, with 121 still missing underwater. The divers focused their search on the third floor where the cafeteria is, but did not recover as many victims as they hoped for. Search also focused on the fourth level of the ship, where the cabins of most Danwon High School students were located. Divers also said there was no air pockets inside the sunken ferry, reducing the chance of possible survivors after the ship submerged completely underwater. The search will continue for the days to come, as parents of the missing have requested the ferry not be lifted out of water until every body is recovered from underwater. Mark?
And Ji-sun, we understand that the family's frustration with the search operation has boiled over. There was a row between the parents and the authorities there. Can you tell us more?
There was a lot of conflict yesterday. The desperate, angry parents have shown very strong distrust against the government, the authorities here, and the search and rescue operations ongoing on the sea. And they sat down with the Oceans Minister and the Chief Commissioner of the Coast Guard from Thursday evening, and they have been talked with them questioning whether there was enough being done to rescue the students. The parents want more diving distance lines to be installed on the fourth deck of the sunken ferry where most students are expected to be, and they're demanding more civilian divers to be brought into the operation. Families of the missing are convinced that the authorities did not go forward with the rescue operation as they had been told, and it's pretty clear at this point that private divers who volunteered to take part in the rescue operation pulled out after conflicting with the Navy and the Marine divers. Parents want them back as they think there are not enough divers out there to go underwater to recover the bodies of their children. There are also allegations that authorities only allowed a certain private company to dive, and that company reportedly has links to the ferry's operator, Cheonghae Marine Company. The Oceans Minister and the Coast Guard chief say they are doing all they can and are making use of every possible asset, but parents don't believe them anymore. This was Song Ji-sun reporting live from Peng-mok-hang Harbor in Sindo.
Now, thousands of citizens from all walks of life have been visiting a temporary group memorial altar that has been set up in Ansan, the city most touched by this disaster. Kim Ji-yeon joins us live from the Ansan Olympic Memorial Hall. Ji-yeon.
Hello, Mark. It's early hours of morning and it's a little bit quiet here right now, but inside those doors behind me is 60 portraits of high school students and teachers. The nation is mourning for the victims. More than 30,000 people have come here so far for the victims that have lost their lives, so tragically lost their lives in the sinking.
I know it's very painful for you, but we will be supporting you. I heard you have hardly been eating. Please take care of your health and get well soon.
No words will console you, but please know that many people are feeling the pain with you and crying with you. I wish the students will go to heaven and live happily.
Ji-yeon, how about those of us that cannot get to Ansan? How can we say our last goodbyes?
Well, for Mark, for those that can't pay their visits here, come here and pay their visits in person, the local government has set up a text messaging service for people so that they can send their condolences to the victims, which are being displayed on one of the screens. The group memorial is open 24 hours a day here in Ansan, except for certain times of the day for regular maintenance purposes. The memorial will be open 24 hours a day throughout the weekend as well. This was Kim Jeon reporting live from Ansan Olympic Memorial Hall.
Now, it's not just those of us here in Korea, but people around the world have reached out to Korea in its time of need. Korean Americans have set up their own memorial altars throughout the United States, expressing support for the victims and their families. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
Overseas Koreans in Los Angeles set up a memorial altar in front of the Korean consulate, and it's been adorned with messages of hope and flowers.
It is heartbreaking for the children. I've been keeping them in my prayers since the incident.
Memorial altars have been set up across the world by Koreans living overseas. Those visiting a temporary altar in Washington, D.C. said they were at a loss for words about the tragedy and plan on holding a fundraiser for the victims' families.
It's not just in Korea, but people in the U.S. as well are also crying for the lost ones.
In Times Square in New York, more than 200 Koreans and foreigners attended a memorial ceremony to show support for Korea and all those here who are suffering from the devastating tragedy. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Now, the families of those still unaccounted for from the sunken ferry asked search crews to finish their search operations by Thursday last night. But as 121 people are still unaccounted for, it looks as though the search will take longer now. The amount of time this is taking has angered many of the family members, and there was a lot of commotion overnight at the Jindo Gymnasium, which is where the family members wait for word on the search operations. We connect live now to our Connie Lee at the gym. Connie, so what happened last night?
Hey, hey, Mark, what I can tell you this morning is that it is quiet as things seem to have settled down here at the Jindo Gymnasium. What I do want to tell you right now, though, on the screen to my far right is a slide up of the description of the latest body recovered from the sunken ferry. Now, according to the slide, the body was recovered just about an hour ago at 5:15 a.m. Korea time, and the description says it is of a female student who is about 160 centimeters tall. Now here this morning, people are either waking up or have just fallen asleep, as many people had a very long night yesterday. Just before 10 p.m. on Thursday, there was a bit of an unexpected commotion that broke out here. Last night, a large group of family members of those still unaccounted for stormed out of the gym and got on a shuttle bus to head to Pimokong Harbor, the harbor closest to the sunken ferry site and where our reporter Jisun is. Now, they went to join the protests going on there that search operations were not being done thoroughly enough and that not as many divers were going in. Family members had asked officials to finish their search operations by Thursday night, since the weather is supposed to worsen today and over the weekend. Mark?
Connie, hopes have dimmed for survivors now as the days have turned into more than a week now. Family members just want the bodies of their loved ones before they decompose too badly. They must be losing hope fast now that the weather, like you say, is expected to take a turn for the worst.
You're right. Well, the families that I've talked to say they are just tired of waiting and waiting. And right now it is about quickly finding the bodies and, like you said, before the bodies decompose. What I can tell you, though, is that there is a glimmer of hope. More than 120 people still unaccounted for. So that means more than 120 families still have loved ones not confirmed dead yet. Now, the gym is noticeably less crowded now as people have been leaving once their loved ones have been found. Now, I have been talking with a father who is looking for his son, and all he says is that he wants his son out of that ship as soon as possible. Now, those still remaining here at the gym say they can't help but not lose hope. Reporting live from the Jindo Gymnasium, this has been Connie Lee.
Hundreds of Navy, Coast Guard and civilian divers have been working 24/7 to find any survivors inside the sunken ferry, often pushing themselves to the limit of what's physically and mentally possible. There's also a growing risk that they may develop lethal disorders as they dive deeper and deeper into the murky waters. Paulie reports.
The Korean Navy's underwater demolition team and salvage unit have become the backbone of the search and rescue operation at the ferry disaster site. These highly trained divers are only supposed to make a single dive per day. However, many are forgoing this safety protocol in an attempt to find more missing passengers, often jumping into the water 3 times within 24 hours. To make matters worse, the heavy currents are impeding the speed of divers, often forcing them to stay underwater for longer periods of time, putting them at greater risk of accidents. A Navy officer on Tuesday received urgent medical treatment after his arms were suddenly paralyzed.
There are limitations to diving. Depending on the rate of activity, the ability of divers in the water to tolerate their external environment is sensitive.
This past week alone, 10 divers were treated in hyperbaric oxygen chambers for decompression sickness, commonly known as diver's disease. It's a condition where inert gases form bubbles inside the body due to the growing pressure surrounding the diver. Many symptoms include intense joint pains, paralysis, and even death. It's the same disorder that took the life of a diver who was participating in rescue efforts following the sinking of the Cheonan warship 4 years ago.
Some divers that go into water can't remember what they did. Since they can't even think and act, they don't have conscious control of their bodies. That's decompression sickness. They have to quickly get inside a chamber and receive treatment and be made to rest.
In response, the government says it is taking necessary measures to ensure the safety of all rescue workers at the site as these deep-sea divers continue on with their tireless efforts to recover victims and locate any survivors. Paul Yi, Arirang News.
The tragic events over the past week have taken a toll on everyone here in Korea, not to mention the families, friends and classmates of the missing and the victims. Doctors say emotional stress in times like this can affect your health, even if you aren't directly affected by the disaster. So Misorang explains.
People in Korea have been glued to the TV since the sinking of the Sewol ferry. Sadness and anger are common feelings felt by people watching the incident unfold before their eyes.
My heart would beat fast and I would get teary-eyed. It's just too sad, those young kids.
As a Korean citizen and as a parent of kids, I feel for the parents. It makes me sad.
With catastrophes that affect an entire nation, the extreme stress felt by its citizens can put them more at a risk for heart problems. Research shows that high levels of stress produce stress hormones, which can then have damaging effects on the heart. After the deadly earthquake in LA back in 1994, studies reveal that the number of people who died of heart attacks spiked tenfold. A sudden increase in stress increases the blood pressure and makes a person more susceptible to infections and blood clots.
Rapid increase of stress causes inflammation and hardening of arteries, and the substance in your body that inhibits inflammation in blood vessels called the NO is less produced.
Being depressed also puts one at a higher risk of heart problems. Experts say that during times of high stress, people crave foods that are spicy or salty. And exercising, that takes the back seat. Doctors recommend people should make efforts to calm their emotions and have a set routine schedule. People with high blood pressure or high cholesterol should take extra care that their mental condition does not worsen their physical being. Misorang, Arirang News.
Now, authorities are broadening their investigation into what exactly happened on the day the Sewol ferry capsized and who is responsible for this tragic man-made disaster. For more, we're joined by Shin Se-min in the studio. So, Se-min, what's the latest we have this morning?
So far, it looks like all 15 crew members, including Captain Lee Jun-seok, will face criminal charges. Now, 11 have already been charged with negligent homicide with violating maritime law, with the remaining 4 under investigation as suspects. Comments made by some of the crew members are causing quite a stir as well. One testified that crew members, including himself, were in a room less than 10 meters away from where the passenger cabins were right before they fled the ship, which clearly suggests that they did not follow the standard protocol to help passengers escape.
Yes, and questions continue to mount about the crew's actions or lack of actions, essentially. What about the cause of the sinking? Are we any closer to finding out what happened?
Well, not really. I can only tell you that investigators are looking into all possibilities at this point. Prosecutors are looking into another similar vessel, the Ohama-na-ho ferry, also owned by the same Cheonghaejin Marine Company, the operator of the sunken Sewol, to find possible clues. As the investigation continues, a number of possible causes have been discussed, but there are 3 that have emerged as the most probable scenarios as of now. One is that the Sewol ferry made a sudden right turn, and another is that the 3,500 ton of freight on board was not secured properly. And lastly, there is also a possibility that the renovation made to the ferry to maximize the number of passengers and cargo made it unstable.
Okay, Semin, thanks for your report and keep us updated throughout the day. The victims of the ferry sinking will be high on US President Barack Obama's mind when he arrives in Seoul on this Friday for talks with President Park Geun-hye. The US leader is expected to deliver his country's deepest sympathies to the victims and the families of the Sewol ferry disaster. Also on his very busy agenda will be security issues. The 2 leaders will discuss ways to respond to North Korea's latest nuclear threats. Obama is expected to also call for easing of regional tensions sparked by territorial disputes. The visit will be President Obama's 4th to Korea, representing the most trips to the country by a sitting US president. Shifting our focus to the economy now, and Korea's gross domestic product grew at the fastest pace in 3 years in the first quarter of this year. Central bank officials say the latest figures confirm the nation is on a recovery track. Son Jung-in reports.
The Bank of Korea said Thursday that the country's real GDP grew 3.9% in the January to March period from a year earlier, spurred by strong exports and expanding private spending. This quarterly growth is the fastest on-year gain since the first quarter of 2011. Compared to the previous 3 months, the economy was up 0.9%, maintaining its growth of around 1% for the 3rd consecutive quarter. The bank said the expansion was helped by steady growth in exports, which gained 1.7% from the previous quarter. Among other factors contributing to the recovery were a surge in research and development activities and a gain in investment in the construction sector. Central bank officials said the first quarter growth signaled the Korean economy is returning to its normal growth track. Director General of the Bank of Korea's Economic Statistics Division Chung Young-taek said if this pace of quarterly growth continues, the country would be on track for an annual 4% growth for 2014. Earlier this month, the central bank upwardly revised this year's growth forecast to 4% from 3.8%. Chung, however, added that a variant would be economic impacts from last week's tragic sinking of the Sewol ferry, particularly on consumer sentiment. Son Jang-in, Arirang News.
Time now for a look through the international headlines. We turn to our Eunice Kim standing by at the news center for that. Good morning to you, Eunice.
And good morning to you, Mark. We begin in the Middle East, where Israel has suspended the U.S. moderated peace talks one day after Palestine's Mahmoud Abbas government reached a surprise unity pact with rival Hamas. An official statement said the government of Israel will not hold negotiations with a government that is backed by a terror organization that calls for Israel's destruction. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told U.S. broadcaster MSNBC Thursday in an interview, appearing to leave a window open for future talks, expressing his hope that President Abbas will change his mind. The dominant Fatah faction and the Islamist Hamas group came to an unexpected agreement Monday to reunite, a first such move in years. And tensions are escalating in Ukraine as Ukrainian troops kill up to 5 pro-Russian rebels at a separatist military stronghold in the east. Russia has responded with army drills near its border as Russian President Vladimir Putin warns of consequences should Kiev use force against its own people. The Ukrainian offensive comes as Kiev relaunched its anti-terrorist offensive earlier this week in an apparent breakdown of the Geneva Agreement to de-escalate tensions. Kiev has accused Moscow of supporting terrorism at the state level. And a report by a leading NGO has found that the European Union's transparency has suffered and is vulnerable to corruption. A Transparency International report released in Brussels on Thursday cited complex decision-making procedures and opaque bureaucratic negotiations, adding that the 28th state bloc did not have policies in place to protect whistleblowers. The report examined governance and transparency mechanisms in 10 EU institutions.
I'm Lee Ji-hyun here to give you a weather update in Jindo and around the country. Well, the neap tide period ended yesterday, and as I mentioned earlier, it seems like things will get rough again over at the site. The waves will start to get stronger, and the winds will also blow strong today. But we have 3 opportunities during the day when the currents get weaker. One is at 11:16 a.m. and another at 5:35, and the other at 11:10 tonight, and the speed of flow should slow it down 1 hour before and 1 hour after these indicated times. And including Jindo, the rest of the country should continue to have early summer-like conditions. Well, I'd say more like summer-like weather under sunny skies, and the air quality should be better than yesterday. So please do keep that in mind, and let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The morning low here in Sewol is starting out at 13, and it will rise to 27, and Daegu will soar to 28, and Busan should top out at 23 under lots of sunshine. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju will peak to 24 and Daejeon will soar to 28, while Mount Keungang will have a big temperature gap today and we'll see a high of 19 in the afternoon. Well, that's all I have for you at this hour, but I'll be back with more updates after 10.
And those are the stories we have for you at this hour. Korea Today is coming up in about 30 minutes' time, and our news team will continue to bring you the most comprehensive coverage on the Sewol Ho ferry disaster and the ongoing search and rescue efforts throughout the day. Goodbye.